No, I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Steve Double.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I'm incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to bring this debate to the House this evening on what might be considered a fairly niche subject, but it is a subject that is incredibly important to many people in my constituency and indeed across Cornwall. It was actually suggested to me, Mr Deputy Speaker, that my opening line for this debate tonight should be "Never mind the Pollacks, here's the adjournment debate." But of course I wouldn't possibly comment in that way. But can I begin by actually thanking the Minister? I'm very grateful for the Minister to be responding to this debate this evening, because I want to acknowledge he's been incredibly willing to engage and meet with colleagues who have been seeking to raise their concerns about this issue for many weeks now, and thank him for his engagement. I hope it's not going to end now, but I want to acknowledge that he has been seeking to work with us to find a solution to this particular challenge, because I know he's aware that the decision to have a zero total allowable catch for pollack, the decision that was made in December to take effect from the 1st of January, is having a hugely damaging effect on the livelihoods of many fishermen in Cornwall. It's estimated that upwards of 40 boats that either operate out of or land their catch into Mevagissey, Newquay and Foy in the constituency I represent rely on pollack catch for a very significant amount of their income. One family to mention, that the Hunkin family, who I know have been covered in the media, have said that they stand to lose around £200,000 this year alone, which represents about 2/3 of their total revenue from the decision to have zero quota for pollack. But actually it's an issue that is affecting fisheries across Cornwall. For instance, in my honourable friend, the member for North Cornwall's constituency, boats that operate from Padstow and Port Isaac, from boats that operate from the constituency, my honourable friend, the member for South East Cornwall, from Looe and Polperro, and in the far west from Newlyn. This decision is having a serious impact. And there's no doubt that although pollack is caught from many parts, from many ports around the UK, it has a disproportionate impact on the inshore fishing fleet that operate out of Cornwall. I think we all accept that the recommendation from the Council for the Exploration of the Seas, the ICES, that pollack should have a zero quota, put ministers and DEFRA officials in an incredibly difficult position. And the reality was that, having made that recommendation, it would have been incredibly difficult for the UK to not go along with that. And I think we all acknowledge that. But the result of that decision was that many fishermen literally had their ability to make a living taken away from them overnight. And to put this in perspective, the 570 tonnes of pollack quota that was available to vessels operating from Cornish ports represents a loss of £2.3 million to the Cornish economy. And it's not just fishermen, it's those businesses that serve and support the fishing industry in the supply chain. For example, the harbour master of Mevagissey, Andrew Trevarton, has estimated that the loss of pollack quota will result in a loss of 20% of Mevagissey Harbour's income. And there is no prospect of an easy way of actually replacing that income. And it's very difficult to overstate how important having a thriving operating fishing port at Mevagissey is to the economy of that village, which attracts about 800,000 visitors every year, largely because it is a living, operating fishing port. It's not a museum, it actually is a thriving part of the fishing industry in Cornwall. I'll happily give way to my honourable friends.
Mr. Deputy, can I commend first of all the honourable gentleman from Austell and Newquay for bringing this forward. I spoke to him beforehand. And issues with the pollack fishing does seem to be more of an issue, as he rightly says, in the southwest, where in Northern Ireland we do not have the same concerns. Despite this, there are clear issues with how only allowing certain fish to be caught as a bycatch is impacting the livelihoods of certain and local fishermen. Does the Honourable Gentleman agree that should these issues start to arise further afield than the southwest, i.e. fishing ports within Northern Ireland as an example, that whatever decision the Minister will take tonight to help and assist the Honourable Gentleman when he puts forward, that the same grants and the same opportunities should rightfully extend to all areas of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
I'm very grateful to my friend for the intervention. I think the case I'm making tonight is for a very, very specific issue that we are facing, the impact of the removal of the pollock quota at such short notice is having on a very specific part of our fishing industry. I think what we all want to see is a thriving fishing sector right across the United Kingdom, and fishermen and businesses to support the sector able to thrive and be profitable right across the UK. And we need policies in place that enable that to happen. But what we're facing right now in Cornwall and in other parts of the southwest is very specific, related to the very sort of short decision, the short time frame that was given to vessels, to fishermen to adapt because of the way that this quota went from 1,500 tonnes to zero virtually overnight. I'll happily give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I congratulate my constituency neighbour for bringing this very much needed adjournment debate tonight. One of the fishermen mentioned to me that this feels like his right leg has been amputated and that he is now trying to get through the rest of the year on crutches until we can find a way through this current situation that we're in. Would he agree with me that all of the options that we've been offered so far will only mean that there's a displacement of different species and different ways of catching fish, and therefore it won't actually be any help to the long-term prospects of the fishing industry in Cornwall?
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend and neighbour for making that point, which is in fact the very next point I was going to come on to in my notes, which is some of the suggestions that have been offered to the fishermen that have been affected by this decision is that they can switch to targeting other species. But I think the simple truth is that it's very simple to say, but it's not that simple to do. Partly because of the lack of time, that there was no lead up to this decision, it was literally 2 weeks' notice. And switching to catch other species, you need different equipment. And much of that equipment has got a lead time of several months before it can be delivered. And as my honourable friend makes, also switching to a different species simply displaces that catch from other vessels. So the vessels who work hard targeting that other species then have to reduce their catch and maybe then look for something else, which then has a knock-on effect. So whilst I appreciate the sentiment that can be said that, well, these fishermen need to go and catch something else, it really isn't that simple. And certainly with such short time frame to adjust, it's unrealistic to expect that to happen. There are real concerns and questions about the data on which this decision was made. I think it's accepted that pollock stocks were diminishing and that quotas were being reduced for some time now. But to suddenly go from 1,500 tonnes to zero in one go, when previously we've seen quota drop by a few hundred tonnes a year, was what shocked the industry. And the data, as we understand it, has largely been gathered from the catch of trawlers. But again, it's well understood that the main place that you can find and catch pollock is actually on reefs and wrecks where trawlers can't fish. So there are real questions about how accurate the data that has been used to make this recommendation is actually based on the reality of the current stock of pollock that is available. And equally, fishermen I've spoken to are incredibly frustrated, some of them even angry, because what they tell me is that for several years now they have been saying to the MMO, we're concerned about pollock stocks and therefore we would like to see an increase in the minimum catch size, or an increase in the mesh size for the nets, or to have a close season for 1 or 2 months a year to protect the stock so that we don't have to take this drastic action. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Order.
I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. You timed it perfectly, former Whip. Steve Dovell.
Very grateful, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But when they put this to the MMO said, oh, there's no need for that. We're not concerned. We don't think those measures are necessary. But it looks like the fishermen were right all along, because if these measures had been brought in gradually over the last few years, then maybe we would have been in a position where we could have had a sustainable quota for pollock without this sudden drop to zero. I know the Minister has been looking at ways to try and support those who have been affected so severely by this decision. And I do welcome the steps that he's taken, the work that he's been doing, and the measure that he has brought forward through the Fisheries and Seafood Scheme to expedite applications from those who have been affected by the reduction in pollock stock to help them diversify. That is very welcome. I would just ask him to clarify, because in the letter that was sent out on the 23rd of February, it did say that that scheme would be available to all those who were affected by the reduction in pollock quota, including, I believe, netters. But then in the press release that went out later that day, it seemed to suggest that it was only available to handliners and under 10 boats. So if the Minister could just clarify exactly who the expedited FSS scheme is available to, that would be very welcome. I'll happily give way at that point.
Helpful to him to do that while he's on his feet. I think what I was trying to establish was a priority list, if you like. So those under 10 metres and those who are handliners would be prioritised over those who were over 10 metres or who were netting. That does not mean that they are excluded. It just means that we would prioritise those other boats.
I'm very grateful to the Minister, and that's very helpful to have that clarification. The scheme that's also been brought forward through the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture Science, I think we'll call them CFAS, because that's a lot easier to say, to work with fishermen to gather accurate data about the current stocks of pollock that will hopefully help inform future decisions. Now, again, this is very welcome. Using fishermen who have lost their catch through this decision and paying them to gather data is absolutely very welcome. But again, I think we need to acknowledge that this is only going to assist a relatively small number of vessels through this scheme. Both of these schemes are very welcome, but I think it has to be said that they are not going to go far enough and will not help anywhere near the number of boats that have been affected or mitigate the real losses that are being experienced. There's basically two things I think that we need to focus on. One is how we can help and support now those who have been so badly affected by this decision to protect their livelihoods in the immediate future for the loss of income that they have experienced virtually overnight with no time to prepare for that. And secondly, to lay out a pathway where we can start to work to see pollock quota returned in a sustainable way as quickly as possible. Now, I would urge the Minister to prioritise work with the Specialised Committee for Fisheries, where I understand the UK and the EU will be discussing pollock as a priority topic later this month. And this is a first chance to review the data and to make requests to ICES for refinement of the science and management, particularly of recreational fishers, which I know the Minister knows is a real concern of many commercial fishermen, that there seems to be no restrictions or regulations around recreational fishers when it comes to pollock. The fishermen want to see the UK engaging robustly and confidently with the UK as an independent seafaring nation that we are, and to make the most of this opportunity. I also understand that the Cornish Fisheries Producer Organisation have a meeting with DEFRA and CFAS later this month ahead of the SFC meeting, and I really hope that the Minister and his officials will take that opportunity to really listen to the concerns of our fishing's representatives and to understand the real impact that this is having and to work with them to find a way forward. So what we need is urgent help now. Fishermen who have lost a major part of their income overnight through no fault of their own. They have ongoing business costs, they have mortgages to pay, they have families to support. And it is unrealistic to expect them to adjust at such short notice. They really need some help now, and I would urge the Minister to continue to do all he can to find a way of getting help to these fishermen as soon as we can. And secondly, to work with the fishermen in Cornwall and indeed elsewhere towards seeing a pollock quota return as soon as possible so that we can have a sustainable fisheries for pollock going forward. So I thank the Minister again for all that he's been doing. I look forward to his response to this debate and to continue to work with him and my colleagues to find solutions to these challenges to help the fishermen that I represent and ensure that they have a viable future.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I first of all pay tribute to my honourable friend for St Austell and Newquay, not only for the debate tonight, but the work that he continues to do to support his constituents, but also put on record my recognition for the efforts of the member for Truro, Falmouth and South East Cornwall, who have also been equally tenacious in their pursuit of supporting their own constituents. So, looking at the scientific advice, back in June 2023, the International Council for the Exploration of the Seas, ICES, provided advice that for pollock in western waters, the total allowable catch, TAC, TAC, for 2024 should be set at 0 tonnes for the first time. Now, this followed a benchmark for pollock, which is a process where assessment methods for a stock are reviewed and best available methods are selected. Now, this benchmark led to a change in the assessment from a data-limited method, reliant mostly on landings data only, to a Category 2 assessment, which includes fishery surveys data. The recent benchmark suggested that the stock went below safe biological limits in 2015-16. So the IC's advice received in June 2023 is the best available scientific advice and was the basis on which DEFRA negotiated an EU-UK bycatch, total allowable catch, of 832 tonnes. Now, this bycatch TAC looks to avoid choking other healthy fisheries in the southwest where pollock is caught. It does not, however, allow vessels to target pollock, but I do recognise the difficulties that this is causing, particularly for those who predominantly target pollock and have done for some time. So, in addition to securing the bycatch for pollock, my department has been working hard to find ways to assist and support those most affected, whilst of course keeping the long-term sustainability of the fishery in mind. With that in mind, on the 23rd of February, we announced the reopening of the Fisheries and Seafood Scheme, known as FAS, which is providing up to £6 million in funding to support projects in a variety of areas, including health and safety, processing and, importantly, business diversification. So we're also expediting FAS applications for hand and pole line fisheries on 10-metre vessels, bringing the application process time down from 8 weeks to 4 weeks. This will mean we'll be able to get support to the most affected the most quickly. Now, in addition to that, on the 23rd of February, I also announced that affected fishermen will have the opportunity to take part in a new scientific study led by the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquatic science known as CFAS. This study will see a collaboration between scientists and fishermen to increase our understanding of the stock structure of pollock. Fishers will be engaged in the project to collect generic samples from around 3,000 pollock, receiving payments for initial training and participation. They'll still be able to sell the pollock at market they've caught as part of that study. Applications along with detailed eligibility criteria will be open as soon as possible, encouraging the most affected pollock fishers to apply for that study. Of course, I give way to the Shadow Minister.
I'm very grateful, and I welcome his announcements on February 23rd. But I wonder if he saw the comments made by Andy Reid in Fishing News, where he asked a very salient question: could this not all have been predicted? Could it not have been done earlier?
So I think we do, of course, continue to monitor fish stocks, and we do follow IC's advice. And I think it is a fair criticism that we have seen a decline over many years of pollock over the last 20 years. But certainly the IC's advice continued to recognise that pollock could be caught until June of last year, when, of course, we were forced into this position where we had to take action. Now, I am truly sorry for the impact that is having upon those fishermen that have relied upon that stock. We want to follow that advice to the best of our abilities to make sure that we can try and recover that stock, because I want future generations of fishermen to be able to catch pollock in those waters. So we do need to manage that in the most responsible way possible. So just to, of course, I'll give way to Honourable Lady.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I genuinely thank him for his continued engagement on this. It really is very much appreciated. He might be like to know that following his announcement a couple of weeks ago on the schemes he was presenting, I've written to the Chancellor to ask him for a bit more in the budget, or not the budget we just had, but a bit more in the budget to help the Minister with the potential scheme he might have. We really do need some financial support for these guys now. It really is very critical. Thank you.
Well, once again, I pay tribute to her for her tenacious pursuit of trying to support her constituents. Just turning to the sort of long-term outlook for pollock, because I think that it is quite important with respect to the longer-term management of pollock in the UK. We're going to work with the EU via the Specialised Committee on Fisheries to drive towards an improved stock assessment in which ICs could base future advice upon. Now, I want to see a recovery of this important pollock fishery, and I believe the measures described will help support that sector through a very challenging time. My right honourable friend did mention recreational fishing, and I know this has caused some frustration with social media posts almost taunting those commercial fishermen, because there is an active recreational pollock fishery. And although the evidence base is limited, recreational catch is likely to represent a large component of the total pollock catch. Now, clearly, given the zero catch advice, there is a need to explore the potential to reduce pressure on the stock through management of that recreational fishery. As this is a jointly managed stock with the EU, the UK has committed to take forward work on this issue with the Specialised Committee on Fisheries as a matter of urgency in 2024. We'll work closely with relevant stakeholders throughout this process, and my officials have started discussions with the recreational sector, and we're looking to take this work forward as soon as we can. So, in closing, Mr Deputy Speaker, can I thank my honourable friend again for raising this important topic. Pollock is a key stock and crucial to the South West community. The government will do all it can to support the industry, to improve the stock science and drive the stock towards long-term sustainable management, which of course is in the interest of everyone, particularly the committed fishers of the southwest of England. I should be clear to my honourable friend that this is not the end of those discussions that I seek to have with colleagues. My door is very much open to further discussions to see how we might be able to assist, but I look forward to working with him to support his constituents as he seeks to. Thank you very much.
The question is, that this House do now adjourn. As many as say aye. Aye. Do you know? I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.
Has ended. The proceeding 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 has ended.